Hi.
Hello.
Let me get this picture on.
No
There we
problem.
go. Hi.
How you doing? How's your hand feeling?
Oh, I have scar hand. It's
Yeah.
gonna probably be weird forever, I'm afraid.
Oh,
It's getting there. The
yeah.
skin's, you have really thin skin on the back of your hands. So
You
it's
do.
very sensitive and looks weird. But so
Yeah.
what? My
Yeah.
hand modeling days are over.
Mm, sure. It is amazing. Like the skin, I mean, it really takes a full minimum of 6 months. You know what I
I
mean?
think
Just even to get
so.
it back to like not being so red, that's the other
Yeah,
thing. It just is
yeah.
so like
It's all
inflamed.
red and lumpy and it does not want to be touched or anything like that. So,
The
yeah.
nerves, yeah. Oh, do they recommend like any sort of like therapy for resensitization?
No, I was one no, and I might ask for that. I'm kind of seeing how it goes.
Yeah, how it heals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I broke my arm years ago and I have a big scar on it. And it was like they used to put my hand in like, my whole arm in a machine that just like tossed around sand to try and get,
Really?
yeah, to try. This was back in the 90s to try and like get you desensitized. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my God.
It like really
That
scars
must have
me.
hurt.
Oh, it was just, not my favorite. I almost became a physical therapist because that whole experience
Oh,
instead of a dietitian.
right.
And then my mom
Yeah.
was like, because she's worked in a hospital setting, she's like, you are not cut out for physical therapy. How are you going to lug around like a grown man's
Oh,
body,
yeah.
So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, the point. But anyway, like, yeah, so they would like put your limbs in machines that would help with like just sand, sensory, you know what I mean, stuff to try and reacclimate it back to like,
Wow. Okay. Okay.
I'm sure it's come a long way since the 90s, but
Who knows? One of the things they wanted to do to me in the last year with all this autoimmune garbage that
yeah,
I've had for many years, and I do now have a little bit of neuropathy in my hands, which can get really painful.
yeah.
So they're like, oh, I forget the name of the test. Basically, they just poke you with needles to
Oh,
see, can you feel that? Does that hurt? Does that?
oh,
And I just was like, and this is like this rheumatology, neurology high-end guy, and I just looked at him like,
no
really? I
thanks.
said to him, really? I'm like, is that all you guys have? I'm like, that sounds completely medieval. And
Yeah.
it's like if she's a witch, she won't sink. I'm like, what?
Oh my
So
God.
I
Wow.
said no. And I thought I'd rather go to a chiropractor and have them make sure it's not a mechanical pinchy thing or
Yeah.
why would yeah. So anyway, who knows if they've come a long way or not.
Oh my God. That sounds awful.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm
No
not
way.
doing
I know. Oh, the medical field, it's such a landmine, and you have to
Yeah.
advocate for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, yep.
How's Ben doing?
Oh God, terrible.
Oh, really?
Honestly, Therese, I mean, it's we've, I don't even know what to say. I mean, he's just gotta decide that he's having his life. He's just
Yeah.
everything is always someone else's fault and
Mm,
and I know he's very unhappy and depressed to have left a job he really loved and to have moved
yeah.
in with his
That's
parents. He doesn't
hard.
want
I
to,
know. Going
yeah,
back
he
to the
doesn't want
parents,
to do that. I
always like the
mean,
worst, right?
I
Yeah,
get
mentally.
it.
Yeah.
But his world, he's definitely on the high end of the spectrum, I'd say, function wise.
Yeah.
Very good at hiding oops, I cut my head off here. Any, he can hide that really well, kind of mask it.
Yeah.
So
Which is great. A good life skill, but also hard.
not really, because I think and yes and no. Like, I think it's better if he would just own it and say, look, these are things I really stink at,
Hmm.
executive function
Yeah.
planning.
Right.
Um,
Organization. Yeah.
yeah, and he does try hard but it's very hard to stay motivated and focused. And he had to finally officially resign because, he was on this medical leave and kind
Yeah.
of leading them along, like as if he was going to go back to that job.
Yeah.
And there's just nowhere for him to live. I don't know if you know any
Yeah.
folks who spend time in like Chatham area of Cape. It's like Nantucket. It's
Yeah, I
like,
know.
forget it. There
Yeah.
is no way to afford to live there. And
Yeah.
forget it. In the summer, I mean, even if he had been healthy and stayed, he would have been out of where he lived by now because it's used for
The
summer
high
rental.
season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do they do for this company? Like what do they
People
do?
just leave. People come and go. And this company, it's local people and it's been there a good 20 or 30 years. So, but they do hire local people,
Okay.
but there's not a lot of local like skilled people,
No, totally.
right?
Yeah.
So like there was a coworker there who went through the same program he did in Rhode Island, and I think his girlfriend is from Cape Cod, so they
Oh,
live
he
in
is great.
some
Yeah.
shitty basement apartment. It's
Yeah.
awful. It's just really stupid and awful. And the other thing he had to kind of finally face was it's literally a healthcare desert. He can't,
You're not near anything that's valid.
no,
Yeah.
no. He'd have to be commuting alone to
Right.
Boston, which is about 80 miles, and it's a wretched commute to
Yeah.
get care that he needs. So yeah,
Oh,
he's a little bit
not
miserable right
happy.
now.
I understand. I understand. Yeah. Oh,
No, it's really sad. It's kind of like Chris and I, his whole life. I mean, we were told when he was little, put the headphones on him, put the weighted vest and the helmet, put him in the behavior classroom. He's never going to function. I was told he couldn't go to school because he was too low. He was never low functioning. He was just severe anxiety and dysregulation and sensory stuff, and just incapable of functioning in an uncontrolled environment. So for even in high school, we had a neuropsych tell us, prepare for assisted living. He's functionally, you know,
yeah. Oh,
and we knew those things weren't true, but it's
right.
just this very strange in between space that he landed in,
Yeah.
where he's very bright, he's got all kinds of capability, but then there's huge. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, really, we are at the point where we're like, we've done our job. We cannot do anymore. And he doesn't want us. He just fights
Yeah.
back if you,
Yeah. 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 No, I know you can't win sometimes as parents.
no.
Yeah. Oh.
So
And is there
it's an
anything that he
interesting
can
time.
find like in or around your area or
Oh
in
my God, there's tons here.
yeah.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
huh,
He's got it in his head that he hates the Front Range of Colorado, which is like everything from the Wyoming border to the New Mexico border. He's just decided all the people here, even though he moved here when he was 7,
right.
um, he's got it in his head that New England is where it's at.
Interesting.
Expensive.
Interesting, because I feel like the young people love Colorado. I mean, and when we
They
were
do, yeah,
younger,
right. And it's much
yeah,
younger here.
so much cooler, right?
Plenty to do.
Yeah,
And, Colorado and Boulder especially deserve all the rap they get for
yeah,
being ridiculous. They are. Like, where isn't?
right.
But no, there's plenty here he could do. He's very much he almost majored in historic preservation. That became his minor.
Wow.
So he's so offended by the architecture here.
Well, it's a different style, and it's not old like New
Oh,
England. It wasn't like an original
oh,
colony, so like it's
right.
gonna
No,
be
it's to night
different.
and day,
Yeah,
and yeah, he's like, I can't work on those big, stupid, ugly houses in Aspen. And okay, they're very different.
different thing, different thing. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm sorry, it's
So
hard.
he's got to do a little kind of maturing, I think. Growing up, he's kind of
Yeah,
acting very entitled, and
it's
I'm
hard.
doing my best to sort of let go, and
Yeah, let him do his thing. He'll figure it out,
he
hopefully.
kind of has to. That's
Yeah.
his only way. And yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So
It's hard.
anyway,
I know the things
thanks
they
for
don't tell you about
asking.
parenting, like there's just so many things about it, and it's hard because I feel like, based on your personality, like you just up and went to Hawaii, like you know what I mean? You were like gone, gone, see ya, like I'm doing my thing, I'm going, and I think like I felt very similar. I was like, if I have to go back home and live with my parents, I have failed. Like my whole goal in
I
life was to
know.
get to New York City, be able to stay there, be able to afford it, and like just stay as long as I could. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
boys are different. Like both my brothers after college, it was like just after September 11th, but both of them were living at home. And finally, my mom with my youngest brother, she's like, "You got to go. Like, like, come
Good
on.
for
You know what I
her.
mean? You went to college. Like, come on, get serious. You know what I mean? Because my youngest brother is the brightest. Like, does zero
Yeah.
work. incredibly bright, and I think my mom just saw him not reaching his potential, just taking the easy route. Like, yeah, I'll do your laundry. Yeah, I'll make your dinner. But she's like, and also it was unfortunately all their friends were at home, from high school, because it was like not a great job market post September 11th. So like there was no
Yeah,
incentive to like,
right.
whereas for like me, it was a booming market. It was like you have failed if you cannot find a job and pay your rent, so, but my mom
Yeah,
was
it's very
like,
different, right?
you got to go. Like, let's go. Get serious. You're the smartest one
Yeah,
here. Come on,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But it's hard. The boys
yep.
take a little more direction, I find.
Yeah, and it's really stunning. One of the interesting things about Ben, his whole life is just the executive function isn't good, and I
Yeah.
don't know if it ever will be. And he does kind of live in that lower brain, like fear, anxiety, fight, flights,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
he's sort of frozen. And the things that I don't know if I ever told you this one. Did I tell you this story about the bus? Can I just mention this really quick?
No,
It's
I
like
don't
you
think
never know what he doesn't know, what's
yeah.
very intuitive for someone with a little bit of a frontal lobe. So we live about a mile from his high school where he went, and there's a bike path, and you could, not touch a street and be on a nice bike path right to the door of the school, or there's a city bus. There's no school buses here.
Okay.
So, unless you have a special needs situation. So we're right on a bus loop. He could, free, easy or cheap. So I was at the time, that's when I got very sick and
Mm.
I couldn't drive at all. I couldn't even drive him a mile to school. So I was like, Ben, you're gonna ride your bike or take the bus. So we had to teach him to ride the bus, which we understood that's very novel for him and it wouldn't innately make sense to him. So we did. And the bus is all like any bus system, there's routes,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
So the one to our house is called the Skip. And after he's been taking the bus forever, one day he goes, I'm like, how's it going? He goes, well, I never really know where the bus is going to go.
But it's on
I'm
a route.
like, I'm
What do you
like,
mean?
yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, he's like, well, I get on the Skip and I'm not really sure. I'm like, I just blew my mind. So what he didn't know is that every skip, that's the route. It does the same thing. And I'm like, well, he's into trains. Big
Yeah.
surprise. So like, it's like a train route. It's not different. And so he was getting on that bus every day, full of anxiety that he might end up in Denver or
Oh,
something.
not in the right spot. Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. So it's just stuff like that even to this day,
Yeah.
that's
I think the level of fear, you know what I mean? That like they say, like the kids have in general, it's
Mhm.
like it's hard to understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Their whole like outlook and perspective is just like
yeah,
sits on this fear,
yeah.
everything.
Do you see that in Murphy's age group? I mean, I really wonder.
Yeah, I do. Because it
Mm,
shows up in different ways. Like you said, like some of these kids are good at like masking or pretending like they fit in, right? But they're like internally like very nervous. Like, and even with my son, like the other day, he's doing this nature camp and it's like really like straight out of the 80s, which is why I chose it. Like it's just like kind of rugged and kind of a free for all. Like it's not like a terribly structured, but they like take a bus somewhere and they like go on a like a hike and then there's always a like a watering hole or a beach or something. You know what I mean?
oh, that
That's
sounds
kind of the day.
nice.
Yeah, out in Maryland. It's beautiful. But I was like, I always ask him like, "How was your day?" Good. And I'm always like, "We're like, were you nervous at any point?" Because that's just part of his demeanor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, when he said we were going to take a hike, like I didn't really know what to expect. And I was like, but, and he's like, but I liked it. And then like same thing, we had horrible thunderstorms yesterday, like pitch black. It was crazy, like tornado warnings, hail warnings, all of it. And I was
Yeah.
like, he was like, Mom, we were on the bus when that storm started. I said, and he goes, I was scared. You know what I mean? So it's just, I mean, I would have been scared too, because I was like
Yeah.
running around the house, like making sure like everything was secure because it was crazy for a
Oh,
minute.
yeah.
But yeah, I think the level of fear sort of that they have and they live with and just their baseline, it's hard. And you being normal, you're always like, this is not like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? So
Right.
you push them because you want them to be able to participate and integrate and like succeed, but there's a lack of understanding that like there's just certain
Yeah.
things that like
Yeah.
are very overwhelming, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. crazy. I'm sorry.
Interesting. I know Ben really has so much in it. He has a lot of talent. He's very bright. He's very personable and very social. He just yeah, lives in that fear space, and he kind of
Yeah.
always has, which is
But it's good to be
hard.
social because that is, I think, the key for
Yeah,
most.
he loves being social, but on only on his terms, like if I like we're supposed to go to this big family reunion in New Hampshire. Um, Chris's mom's family, well, he comes from these old New England families on both sides, so it's big.
Hmm.
And it would be so fun.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, in the same spot, there was a family wedding. One of Chris's cousins, who's like our age and had never been married, got married. It was like a
Oh,
big shindig. It was really fun.
fun.
Ben wasn't invited because that generation it cut off at our generation.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want to go, I want to go. Well, this is all in the same venue. A lot of the same people. He's like, I'm not going.
Hmm.
He's just, anyway,
Yeah.
he would have a blast if he went, I'm sure. But
Yeah. Well, hopefully he figures it out. But I know I do feel like it's really hard when the job stuff is up in the air. It
mhm.
just, you feel like you've lost direction and purpose sometimes,
Yeah, 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 it's really hard.
it is really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hopefully he figures it.
Not to me. I'm done. I don't have to
I
work.
know, free as a bird. Everyone's jealous.
Oh my goodness. It's kind of dawned on me just like in the last month. Ah, I guess I'm retired. Like,
Amazing.
fine. I'm
Wow.
fine with that. And if we can sort it financially, then
Yeah.
fine.
I mean, it's such a gift. I mean, I feel like no one from our generation will ever retire. We will just all work.
I never thought I would. I never thought I
Yeah.
would. I thought, it's not like we're wealthy. I mean, we have things we can do some smoke and mirrors and get by, but
Yeah.
um, no, I don't know. But I certainly don't miss it now at all. This is
Yeah.
much more fun doing this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I was saying to my husband too, because like he's in the media industry and the personalities he works with are just like
I
completely
can't imagine,
insane.
Therese. Oh,
I was like,
oh,
Aaron, you like, I don't know like how you deal with this craziness. They're so narcissistic and it's so crazy
ugh,
and it's all the Hollywood people and they're just horrible,
ugh.
horrible, horrible
They're
humans.
all moving to Boulder. That's the
Oh,
problem.
is that true? Oh, I
Oh
guess
my God. Every
Montana.
time I see
Yeah.
a Tesla with a California plate, I'm like, go home.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
want you to come here.
Right. And they're the worst, the worst. And so we were saying how like hard the service industry is, right? Like I'm in a service industry servicing people. He's in a service industry servicing people. I was like, Aaron, we gotta figure this out. It's like we gotta like sell something on a shelf because at a certain point, like you just can't deal with people. It's just they make you
I
insane,
know. Yeah.
and it's so
And it's
mentally
gotten so
draining.
much weirder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Demanding and crazy. And like with the internet, everyone's like a expert. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of debunking things that people come to you with.
Ugh.
But yeah,
Does Aaron just kind of roll with it? Is he just like, whatever?
yes, I was like, Aaron, you are like his ability to just be incredibly patient and like just deal with it blows my mind. Yeah, he's insanely patient and he's also been doing what he does for so long that he's like, yeah, they're like mad today, but they'll call me tomorrow. Like he just knows. You know what I mean? Like he just knows it's like an ebb and a flow and
Don't engage
they
the
come
energy.
back. Yeah, they come back always because at a certain point, like it's harder to find like a new person to train to get up to speed with what he does, or he knows like their archives and things like that. So, and so he just like deals with it, but like, no, constantly. I mean, like when I tell you that like Charlie Rose calls every single night at dinner time as
Does
I'm
he
putting dinner
really?
on the table every single night. And Aaron is like, this is
Mm.
like his downtime. Like he doesn't have dinner until 7. Like we eat like 6, 6:15, 6:30. We have a little kid. Every single night around dinner time, he calls. Every single time, Aaron's like, hey, talks to him for a few minutes. And then he's like, listen, Troy, I gotta go. It's like dinner time. It's my only time with my son, la la la. But like just doesn't register. You know what I
Does
mean?
Charlie Rose have, I mean, I know who he is, but does he have kids? Did
No,
he ever have?
he was married. He got divorced to chase success. Like he chose success over like life in a marriage. And
So
he's
he's never had kids.
never had kids. This
It's really hard to, I
yes.
have a good friend who, that I got to deal with it just this spring. Very odd comments around my mom dying, and she's younger than me by a good 15 years, but we've been good friends. She's never had kids, she's never been married.
Just doesn't
And
get
then
it.
no, and then some really weird comments around Ben moving back home, which, nobody likes. None of us are happy,
Yeah, but he needs it. So like
just
maybe,
insensitive, why don't, and I haven't said anything, but it's like how I can't deal with it. I can't.
yeah, it's like
So
another
kind of,
thing, right? You're just like, I can't, right? Yeah, and I
mm,
think that Aaron is good at that too. But like, I mean, Charlie Rose, he calls it 7:30 on a Sunday. Like, it's just there's no boundaries. So that's the thing with like all these people, right? They are surrounded by people that yes them to death, and
right,
there's never any limits put on them. Like it's
right.
always just like I'm the star, I'm the reason. Like this whole operation exists. I'm important. I'm special. You all serve. Like this whole
That's just so
mental thing.
funny to me. I
And
can't
they're
even
all like that.
imagine.
And he's got
Yeah.
multiple clients like this, all of them. You know what I mean? So we were the other night. I was like, Aaron, we just like the service, like servicing people is a problem.
We just finished watching that little series called Sirens. Have
Oh,
you,
someone else told me to watch that. I haven't seen it.
that would be those people. You guys
Yeah,
might get a kick
they're the
out of it. It's
worst.
only
Yeah.
5 episodes, so it's not a big commitment. But
Well, it's also like the one with John Hamm where he's the hedge fund guy.
oh, right. I was wondering about that one too.
Also the entitlement, also
Oh,
the like I'm
right.
so special, blah blah blah. But that's more like I'm so special because I'm like a financial savant and I have money. So money makes me important and better than everyone else. But it's just, yeah, I was like, we just it's service. You got to just like cap dealing with people. If you can eliminate dealing with people on like a everyday basis, you'll be fine. Like,
Okay. All
um,
right.
it can be
Well,
hard.
I've eliminated them.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm done.
totally.
Do not miss. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
here we are. I love our topic. This is a good
Oh,
topic.
no, this
I
is a
kind
really
of feel like unprepared. There's so much information.
I did my best to just cobble something together at night.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just feel like the rise in popularity of supplements today is almost a little bit of cause for concern. Like you need to really understand like what you're doing, how much you're taking, the integrity of the manufacturer. A lot of people buy off of Amazon, which we know can be a problem, between
Right.
counterfeits and just poor handling, right? So you spend all this money on something that's degraded by the time you get it.
Right.
So, and I think it also speaks to the fact that there is this large acknowledgement that the quality of the food supply is severely diminished.
Right. I mean, one of my other topics that I hope we can someday do,
Yeah.
I'm just under nutrition in children and development and, behavior as well, and
Yeah.
just all these micronutrient things. And that's an old
Yeah.
article that I just happened to land on. And of course, these kids should be supplemented. That was from 1995. So imagine now what it's like.
No, I know, because then you've had like parents who are undernourished, making a baby, having a baby that's
Right,
undernourished, and then also just I think the toxin load is crazy. I think the volume of
right.
chemicals that have entered, through air, water, food, all the areas, is at a very, it's dangerous.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how should we dive in here?
Maybe
Let's
we
see.
just, yeah, maybe we just start with sort of the opener. Like supplement industry's exploded. There's been
Hmm.
a very big, push from a lot of like doctors, practitioners. We want to, talk a little bit about that because it can be complex and sometimes unsettling between like regulatory gaps, practitioners who have conflicts of interest, and also like
Hmm.
certain formulations or combinations of formulations that, are unproven,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
should we do that?
Yeah. Let's just try it.
Okay, let's just see how it goes.
Give it a spin.
All right. You want to do the intro or should I?
You're really good at
Do it?
it. You
Oh,
you
okay.
do it.
Maybe do it. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Good to have you here. Today, we are going to be talking about supplements, the good, the bad, and the unregulated, as they are in this country. As many of you have probably seen, observed, heard, the global supplement industry has exploded. It's a multi-billion-dollar empire. And it promises everything, right? Better health, better minds, stronger bodies, longer lives. But it's complex and it can be unsettling because there's a lot of regulatory gaps. Sometimes there are conflicts of interest with practitioners, and sometimes formulas and combinations of formulas that are unproven. So you end up spending a lot of money and getting very little return. So today, Judy and I are going to be talking a little bit about that. And for those of you that are new, I'm Therese Nadler, registered dietitian out of Annapolis, Maryland, from Nadler Nutrition. And I have Judy Converse here, out of Boulder, Colorado. She's been in practice, I think, 30 years. So she's always got
Something like that.
insight and input to share. But we're both registered dietitians, so we love to look at things from the science perspective and sort of dig through it, debunk it, and figure out, what the best recommendation may be, or also just provide tips on, how to navigate some of these things that are a little more complex, or a little bit like landmines. So
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Therese. This is a really fun topic. I think it's a fun topic. And yeah, it's a big story. I also love to make a plug for you and I both having a graduate credential in public health nutrition, because what does that mean? So it's not just you become a clinician, which we have, and I spent 25 years as a clinician working one-on-one. But the cool thing about public health nutrition is you're studying and understanding nutritional epidemiology. So that's how does nutrition function on a population scale, right? And understanding the statistics that express that, understanding population health indices, things that we talked about before, like infant mortality, maternal mortality, or lifespan, or all kinds of things like that. So supplements are playing a big role there. And what's so interesting is I just was glancing at a screen on some data showing that during COVID, pharmaceutical sales took a little dip, of course, because people stopped going to the doctor. Supplement sales did not. And people could get them and people could use them. I think people were interested in not getting COVID and taking
right.
extra things like zinc or vitamin C or vitamin D, and some of these things that did get reviewed kind of in the aftermath, and like, yes, these nutrients are useful for your immune system. So it's a huge topic. And I kind of come from a perspective of having used them as a practitioner. And how do you do that? And with kids specifically, right? So in my practice, it was all infants, toddlers, children, teens, whatever. So where do we go with that? One of my challenges in practice was, well, two things. When parents would come into practice, usually, not always, but quite often, they would already be using some supplements.
Same.
And they would not be doing it in an effective way because, how are they supposed to know, right? What are they?
Right. You
They're
just go
not
to, yeah, you go to the market,
practitioners.
you pick up the brand that's at the market, and you think you're doing like your child, like this is what you should be doing, but like, is the potency correct? Is the efficacy there? Does it have the right ingredients? I agree with you 100%.
Right. Some of them would be just pell-mell, willy-nilly trying things, but spending money, but not really getting the effect. So we would work with that, and then we'd get very targeted on what will work for this child, and that would be based on a very thorough nutrition assessment. We've talked about that before. That would, for kids, always involve looking at a food diary and make parents fill them out. I have a little way for them to do that. There's apps for that. If you want to look at that, they can break down nutrients for your kids. And that's another angle too. It's like, is the food supply as nourishing as it was decades ago? No.
There's
No,
no,
our
right.
soils are depleted. So there's all this rationale out there of why people are starting to reach for these things and try to shore up what's missing. So basing that on what do you give a child, nutrition assessment, and then that would look at growth pattern, what they eat, if there's labs, signs and symptoms, what's the history in the family, what do they eat. So a lot of components would go into a decision to give a child a supplement. I want to tell listeners and parents right now, any provider who just hands you a supplement without a rationale, I'm not a fan. There
Yeah.
needs to
There
be
has to,
just
it has
like
to tie back. Right.
your pediatrician shouldn't hand you a drug for just a shrug. Like, well, your child's presenting with some ADD features. Try the Adderall or try this. I mean, that does kind of happen though.
It
But
does a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And we talked about that in other episodes where there's a lot of nutrition components of attention that you can fix and you don't need a medication.
Right.
But
And if your system is awry, sometimes these drugs overstimulate, and then you end up with kids who have a horrible reaction to some of these
right,
drugs, right? So
right.
that's the
Yeah,
other part of
so
this. Yeah.
right, no wonder parents are reaching. I would get a lot of parents coming in already using the supplement. Once in a while, I'd get parents coming in using a lot of supplements. And
Mm.
it was way too much. And we're talking 60 pills a day.
Oof.
for
Wow.
a 7-year-old, and the parent is opening the capsules, or maybe they've taught the child to swallow pills. So that's just untenable. That's just like
Right.
functionally untenable. And then you got to wonder, well, what are all these pills doing with each other?
And right, you're also discounting the fact that like there's a lot of compounds in foods, particularly plants, many things that we have not even discovered that are beneficial. So it's, supplements are interesting because it's usually an isolated single ingredient. Sometimes there's a combo in there for, to help with activation of an ingredient, but the whole plant or the whole food product has a lot of nutrition in it that is, we know some of it, probably not all of it. Phytochemicals were just discovered really in the 90s. I'm sure there will be other compounds that, we will discover as the years and decades go on. So I do think as dietitians, supplements can be a stopgap and they can help get you to a better place initially, especially if you have, I think, picky eaters or kids that are struggling in different ways. But I think the goal is always the food, really. It's to open
Right.
up and
I
get
would
these kids
always,
eating.
exactly. I would always start with food, giving kids enough food and macros they need, macros they can use, nutrients they can use. So yeah, there's synergy in food and in plants and herbs as well. And there's using just micronutrients. Like when I say micronutrients, that's like your vitamins and minerals, and
Right,
sprinkling them into a supplement. And they work in conjunction with food in the body.
right.
Supplements also blend these with all kinds of herbs. So we've now got nutraceuticals or using nutrients in like a pharmaceutical dose. And there's definitely a place for that. There is a place for that with children as well. An example a lot of people have heard of is methylation impairments. If you have
Right.
a genetic difference, which is very common, that you are not very good at methylating, which is one of the biochemical pathways we need to detoxify things and to also balance mood.
Activate certain
Right,
vitamins, right? Get them into
right.
active forms that the body can use in certain pathways.
Right, and it helps balance our neurotransmitter chemistry. So people who have methylation impairments tend to lean more toward allergies, anxiety, and a whole bunch of other challenging conditions. So yes, those are people who might need more methyl B12 or methylfolate and not use a folic acid. So there's practitioner can help you with that.
Yeah.
There's also boop, just lost my train of thought. I'm gonna
That's all
fix
right.
it
It
in
happens,
post.
Um, but I think to your point, supplements, especially in this country, supplements are pretty heavily unregulated in general,
Right. There's a lot of
so
leeway.
you can
Um,
order whatever you want. You think your kid needs this, you can order kind of any dose you want. You can get it, without a problem. And I think something to flag here is that other countries do not operate the same way.
yeah. And I will say this. So I was just trying to get familiar. There's been a lot of regulatory steps over the last 30 years
Yeah.
toward, I mean, I can do a little screen share timeline of dietary supplement regulations in the US going all the way back to 1915 and regulations going up into 2023.
Yeah.
So there's been efforts to get at it. Of course, the Food and Drug Administration basically can't regulate supplements very well. I mean, there is legislation, there have been efforts, but the FDA does require make very stringent requirements around what actually goes on a label for a
Yep.
supplement.
Labels are strict for sure.
They're very strict, and what you can say about a supplement, what your claims are, they do
Yep.
regulate that, and they do kind of slam it. Manufacturers do get slammed if they step out of bounds. They don't though really regulate, and they kind of can't because it's just the volume is just too huge.
Correct.
Supplements don't need pre-approval before, like a drug, right? A
Right.
drug,
So
yes,
supplements are not regulated like drugs, that are
right,
distributed from a pharmacy. And I think what you're getting at is manufacturers do not need to prove safety really or efficacy before selling the
right.
product. You just got to be careful about
They
your claims. You can't go too overboard with your claims because then they will come for you.
yes,
Um,
I think they do. There is a safety, but it's not super robust. And when was that?
pretty limited.
2007. Yeah, Good Manufacturing Practices was issued by the FDA in 2007. But what consumers, parents might want to know, or people using supplements, is a lot of companies do their own they are more stringent than the GMP, the good manufacturing. So you might look for that on the label, that they have
Yep.
an independent third-party lab testing their product. That makes a product more expensive. And
Right.
that's another challenge. So you're at the supermarket and you're picking up, I won't call out brands, but something sitting on the shelf at the supermarket may or may not have as stringent a testing as something that a supplement company only wants you to be able to buy through a provider. Because they want it to work. They don't want to have a safety situation on their hands, and they want their product to perform well. So
Yeah.
there's higher standards that can go, but that falls on the manufacturer if they want to do that.
Yeah. And I do think as a practitioner, I certainly recommend certain brands. I think certain brands based on years of experience, the third party testing, and just the efficacy that I have seen, professionally and personally, there are certain brands that I will always gravitate to because I feel good about recommending those brands. I know you're going to get a good product. And I think these are some of the brands that are not in the supermarket, right? These are some of the brands that like only people in sort of the medical world are aware of. Um, so it,
Right, there's a whole bunch, there's hundreds and hundreds of brands that you probably can find on Amazon. They're not supposed to be sold there because the manufacturer makes people sign a contract saying I'm a licensed healthcare provider, and yeah, here's a copy of my license. I've had to do that many times over the years. And they don't want these products sold just willy-nilly on the internet, but that does happen. That
it
does
does.
happen.
And a word of caution, because I know for a lot of people, when you buy supplements, Amazon is very easy and you have Prime. And so you just put it in your cart and it shows up within 24 hours.
Right.
But there's a lot of, I think, handling problems. If you've ever gotten supplements from Amazon that are clumped together or goopy, right? That means they sat in a hot warehouse on a hot truck, they were not handled correctly. So the efficacy is probably diminished in some form. There's also some concern about counterfeit with Amazon, with the rise of 3D printers and people being able to copy some of these brands that are highly regarded. They basically get capsules, fill them with rice powder, and pretend you've paid $80 and pretend you're getting this thing that's really just a useless capsule. So I do think
Right.
there is some caution around. You want to buy from a reputable source.
Yes.
I think that's important.
Right. Yeah, and the reputable sources will be your integrative or functional medicine providers, people
Right.
who are a naturopath or an integrative physician or something like that. Yeah, and people with experience using them too. And let me just see, there was something else here that really jumped out that I wanted to say. Oh, so another thing about the FDA, one thing they will also do, like we said, you can't make claims that go out of bounds. You can't say it cures anything on a label. You can't really even say it treats. You can't use the word treat. And in fact, dietitians, if you've run into this too, Therese, for our license and our registration status, I am very cautious across all my decades. I never said the word treat. I don't treat anything because that's
No,
something
got a
only a
scope.
physician, yeah, physicians are licensed to treat. Nutritionists, dietitians are licensed to support. So we can give you supportive supplements and things like that. So the FDA does not allow that language that steps into that treatment zone. Another thing that they'll do, and this is the industry is I will say this, the pharmaceutical industry is very interested in all this because of course it's a competitor for them.
And it's a billion-dollar industry.
It's a big, well, the pharma industry is a lot bigger.
But but this would be a good one to potentially, get your
They
fingers
would
into,
love to own
yeah.
it. They would
Yeah.
love to own it for sure. So one of the things they've begun doing is analyzing different products to see if there's anything in them that resemble a medication or the action of a drug or chemically resemble a drug. And they will stop a manufacturer from producing that if it resembles a component of a drug. And I think the only example that comes to mind, and this does not relate to children, is for Viagra. There was a
Interesting.
product that claimed to work as well as Viagra, and when it was analyzed by the makers of Viagra, which I think is Pfizer, and that's a multi-hundred-million-dollar drug for them, there was one component in it that they successfully claimed to the FDA, this looks like a component inside our Viagra, so you have to stop selling it to people. It's too much like a drug. And
Interesting.
we don't want people buying this themselves,
Right.
which was and they succeeded in that, which was disingenuous because they did direct marketing to guys for Viagra themselves without a
Right.
physician in the loop. So,
Mm.
it's right now it's a fierce, fierce fist fight, I think, for
Well, and
supplements and who's going to own which parts of this.
yeah, and I think, I mean, it's interesting because this is like what goes on in the US, but if you look at like Canada, Germany, Australia, they have much stricter standards, they're classified in a certain way where, you have to get pre-market licensing, you have to prove evidence of efficacy, there's quality control audits. It's just a far more regulated industry in those countries. And also misleading health claims are pretty aggressively penalized. So I think it keeps people in their lanes, right, without going egregiously in one direction or another, to be make people understand like legitimately what they can expect by taking this. And I know
Yeah,
Judy, you've said like you've had international clients who are like desperate to get their hands on certain things that you can easily get here, but you cannot get in other countries.
right. I did. Yes, I've had many clients in other countries that would have a family member or some connection to the United States, and they'd
Right.
managed to get, and things we take for granted, like a higher potency probiotic or
Right.
melatonin, or simple things that we do take for granted. Melatonin's an interesting example too. There's this, we talked a little bit about this, I think, Therese, before. There was a news blip, I think last year, saying, oh my gosh, melatonin, there's thousands of emergency room visits for children. They're all going to the ER because they eat melatonin. And I really went down the rabbit hole because I use that a lot in my practice in 25 odd years. And I would use it in kids who really had very disruptive sleep profiles, if you will. They could not sleep, could not fall asleep, could not stay asleep. And if you can imagine, we all know what it's like to have a newborn, but let's say that's been your kid for 7 years.
Oh, so hard.
No one in your house is well. No one is sleeping. People are afraid, right? So they're just frayed, coming apart. It's very hard. No one can function. So what's wrong with a 0.5 milligram dose of melatonin for a 60-pound kid? Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's also
So,
a substance the body makes, right? Like, I mean,
right,
the
it's
other
a
piece of this
hormone.
is not right. This is not something that like is so far into the human body. It's just there's some dysregulation going on in this child that you're, using as an example that like this substance is not being made well enough or it's, getting damaged in some form where it's not working for the child. So, right.
Right. And in looking and doing a nutrition assessment and looking at their diets and their digestion and all these different things, like it would usually become evident why their sleep architecture was so disrupted. They didn't have good protein intakes, or they didn't have good protein and digestion. That's going to be derived from protein in your diet. You're going to break down that into the amino acids you need to make something like melatonin or other parts of your daily rhythms. And these kids just weren't doing that. And there's been nice clinical data on clinical trials on kids using melatonin if they have autism, who are kids who often have sleep problems.
Yeah.
Much bigger doses, 9 milligrams was tested in kids who are school age, and it worked really well. There were no side effects. I'll mention the only thing that you would need to think about using melatonin in a child is that they can't be using drugs that affect that serotonin pathway, SSRIs or medications for that, because those can interact. But when I looked into the news reports about all this kind of yelling about melatonin, what I learned was, first of all, what had actually happened was some children would eat those melatonin gummies, which is an example of something you can buy at the supermarket, right? And they would find them and think they were candy and eat the bottle.
OD, right? Yeah, too
And
much.
that's a big no-no. And all my years, one form of supplements I did not ever like giving children was a gummy, because that's
Also
going to
bad for the
happen. That's
also
going
bad
to
for the teeth, right? I'm sure your pediatric dentists out there will agree.
Right. Well, and there
Yeah,
would
it's
usually
like
be much
candy.
more sugar in those than
Right,
anything else.
right, for sure.
So, and then the numbers that they had reported for these emergency room visits had clearly been conflated when I went down all the way to the bottom of the rabbit hole to find out where they got those numbers, they weren't corroborated. The CDC kind of backpedaled and said, well, this isn't really a study. So I was like, okay, we don't need to throw out the baby with bathwater. If you need to use a supplement like that, you can. It's safe, and talk to your provider about it.
Yeah, I'm with you on the gummies, and it's hard because they're very pervasive for children. And it is, you'd be surprised. Like kids can actually learn to swallow real vitamins. They can,
Yeah,
like, at five
yeah,
or six. This is, I know it sounds to some people like, oh my God, that's crazy. I would never even think that.
they
But
can. I've
they
had
can
kids
do
as
it.
young as four,
Yeah,
3 or 4 swallow capsules, and a lot of capsules in the whole professional provider supplement industry. They'll make capsules that are really tiny. There's a super tiny size for little kids to learn to swallow if they have to. And
yeah,
the advantage there is they're not in these really sugary suspensions. So a lot of the products that are made for kids, like we just said, even if they're not gummies, they're powders, liquids,
or
lots of,
tablets.
yeah,
Also, even today, like, because parents are aware, like, you don't want to give your kid like all this sugar, especially first thing in the morning, but then they use artificial sweeteners. So then, you know what I mean? So there's sucralose in a lot of these things, which is also not good for young children, just chemicals you don't want them having. And also it messes up gut bacteria.
right.
Um, so I'm with you. It's tough. You want, I think it's a sweet spot, right? You want it palatable so the kid will take it, but the forms are challenging.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about giving supplements to kids. If you are, I think we kind of land on the same page in that you really should have some guidance. If you're just taking a multivitamin every whatever, okay, fine. But if your kid has a chronic condition, or you're trying to actually make a dent in a symptom that's persisting, yes, there's tons of supplements that might be worthy. But
Right.
again, you really work with someone who's done that with kids before. Or
Yeah.
at the very least, talk to your mom universe, get some input.
Friends. Yeah.
There were moms that I also worked with who just were super detectives and clearly knew a lot more about these things than their doctors, and successfully gave their kids certain supplements, taught me a lot of new things that I hadn't learned and could read up on and study more on the research end of it. So yes, there's things you can do. You can really turn chronic issues around for kids.
For sure.
And I guess one of the things I would say is, please don't don't do's and don'ts. Okay, forget the gummies, right? We're off the gummies. It is dangerous because they are like candy, and that can be dangerous. Number two, please don't give your kid, the 60 pills a day. I mean, no way. You're gonna have to cull that down. I've met so many kids in that situation, and it does turn into kind of a an income stream for your provider to keep selling you stuff and selling you stuff. So no, if I do ever need to give kids a few things in a day, I will only do it like twice. There's some in the morning, and there's some that might be at bedtime or dinner. That's it. We're not going to be chasing kids
All
all
day
day
long.
with pills.
Yeah. And I think, Judy, your point about practitioners getting kickbacks or affiliate commissions or, buying things wholesale and then marking them up for, money to bring in. I mean,
Right.
that it does go on.
Oh,
Um,
for sure. Your providers will definitely um make money from that.
yeah.
And not necessarily the a bad thing. I mean, their expertise is valuable in how to use these, and better that than going to Amazon and plunking around and hit
Right.
or miss and maybe getting something counterfeit or expired or whatever. That's okay. But yeah, I was always kind of a cheapskate with these things with my families, kind of like, look, I've been there as a mom. And
Yeah.
even though I can buy supplements, I have had over the years accounts with different supplement providers. I mean, that stuff's expensive, really
So
expensive.
expensive. Yeah.
So it can really add up. And okay, yeah, judicious use is what I think I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in a lot of ways, like you run some tests, you figure out if there are deficiencies, like if there's certain markers that are, low, high, trending low, trending high, right? So that's the other piece is a lot of, I think what you and I both do is you look at ideal ranges, not just like big generic, traditional conventional ranges for like optimal performance. It's usually a tighter range than what you'll see in like a LabCorp or a Quest, report. But when you do those tests, you're able to really figure out like, okay, this is high, this is low. Let's back into what could be the problem or what's not happening that should be happening or where the kink in the machinery is and, boost it. And you can do that through supplements. I think the other piece of this that we have not talked about, because this is supplements, but there is I think a predisposition, particularly in America, to like add more and more and more. And sometimes the biggest needle movers are what you take away by changing diet. You're removing gluten, removing casein, dairy, so that's also something to keep in mind. And I think it's really a practitioner that would be able to help steer you in that direction because sometimes it's not always more. Sometimes it's actually less. And when you take out something, that can also be that can make a big change.
Yeah, that's so true. I would often encourage families if they'd come in and we get started working together to go on a supplement holiday, I'd call it. And they might come in with a ton of supplements and I would just be like, look, let's just take it away and see where the baseline lands. Where does your kid land functionally? And yes, we can do some different lab tests, whatever. But I was always most helped and informed by looking at the kid. Let's look at the kid. Kids are really good. They're little canaries in the coal mine. They are fast with exhibiting clinical signs and symptoms, quite often faster than adults.
Yep.
So you can see these deficits. And one of the things that I put up on my site years ago was called the sensory nutrition checklist. And it was sort of a checklist of clinical signs. And it would relate to, well, you might look at whether you have a zinc a deficit or an iron deficit or magnesium deficit, or you might have a fungal overgrowth, or this is a sign of a heavy metal toxicity, or this is a sign of a food sensitivity, not an allergy. So you can kind of work through these things with your kid. And again, with a knowledgeable provider too, who's got experience using these things in kids. Another don't that I want to say is I've met lots of families, they come in with supplements and they've been given the provider gave supplements in the adult doses,
That's a big
which was like, what?
one.
What? No, I mean, once in a while, yes, I would say not typical. I would have kids who did very well on an adult dose for a very specific problem of a specific supplement, but giving too much and just pushing that river in your kid's body, it usually can make them sicker. They might feel sicker, worse, more tired, more crabby, more
Yeah. Oh,
reactive.
irritability, big one. Yeah. Headaches sometimes like for I mean, kids should not really get headaches. You know what I
Right?
mean? Like
Right.
if your kid is constantly like have a headache or holding their head, like sometimes they can't verbalize what they're feeling, those to me are some of the signs that are, there's something going on. Some of the pathways that are a little off. Whether it's driven by supplements or it's just like a sluggish system, right? And you need to figure out like what is creating some of that and how do we fix
Right.
it?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, supplements are, it's the adult dose thing is real. And especially, I will say this, I think some people like are aware of functional medicine. And so you'll go see a doctor who traditionally like treats adults. And
Right.
so I think sometimes they just either, I don't know if they forget they're treating a child or if they just aren't like sure how to dose down because there's an actual specific like formula that you use to help dose down for kids based on weight and height and age and all these different things. So that is important too, for
I
sure.
think you're right. I think they do kind of forget that they're working with kids, or they assume that the kids have the the functionality of an adult around detoxification, and that
Right.
isn't a given. That is not a
Yeah.
given.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would start again. I would be very conservative, almost to a fault.
Right.
A
It's
lot of
slow. Right. And that's what also I tell people when I work with them. I'm like, look, I understand a lot of people want an immediate turnaround, right? They spend all this money, they spent money on supplements. They're like, is this really going to work? Like, how long before we see results? And often it's just you got to wait and see. It's a lot of detective work, right? It's like, here's what I think the problem is. Here's how I think we can help it. This is what I'm going to recommend. Do this. When I work with people, it's like, do this supplement, do it for a week by itself. Then if that's working, child's doing well, you haven't seen any negative, consequences like headaches, irritability, moodiness, any of that stuff we talked about, then I'm like, let's try this one. You know what I mean? And then you have, but so you're layering it in a very controlled way over time so that if for some reason that child does not respond well or does not react well, you can pinpoint what it was. You
Exactly.
start with, like to your point, 30 a day, it gets very hard to know, well, what was the needle mover? Like which one changed that behavior and which one caused this, feeling. So,
Right. You cannot know. That's really a really good do. That's really
yeah,
good advice to start one thing at a time, observe, give it a few days, and probably start at like half the dose you think, even if your provider tells you, like just go slow, low and slow is what we would always be working on and building up. And then you can follow your child's pace. Your child's body can kind of show you the pace that works for them.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. That's important too.
And then my other question for you that comes up is like, okay, so we have some supplements, they're working, the food part's getting better. That's a slow process for a lot of these kids, like the picky eating and being open to trying new, different foods that are very, helpful. What do you do when it's like time to wean off? Or what is your system or process for, taking kids down off of something that you've ramped
Right.
up on?
Yeah, well, that would depend a lot on the supplement.
Yeah,
So for something like a supplement or a couple things we might be using for constipation, let's say a family doesn't really want to keep using Miralax and they're using natural laxatives, and there's lots of them, we
yeah,
would titrate down. We would say remove half or use it
yep,
every other day and just
yep.
see maybe the child still needs it. You'll find out. Or
Quickly.
maybe they need
Right.
less. Maybe they
Yeah,
will use half the amount and then in a month or so, you can revisit titrating away from that.
yeah,
Something like a lot of kids on the spectrum, kids with ADD features or mood anxiety, they might benefit from these high potency B group vitamins,
yeah.
which can be very, I don't want to say stimulating, or even activating, but they're definitely something you'd want to use in the morning. Don't
Right.
give them to your child in the evening because
Right.
they'll be
Mhm.
awake. Those things are in and out of the body so quickly. So if you want to stop, stop. That's a little different. Sometimes I would have parents come in using really high doses of that stuff. There was a product 20 odd years ago, it was very popular, 30 years ago, going way back, when people first started piecing together that autism is really a medical condition. There's a lot of medical components to it.
Right.
And they were starting to try to tackle that using super high dose pyridoxine and B6 and
Yeah.
magnesium. And that was valid. There was a valid rationale for that, but it can be super activating for some kids.
Especially if that kid crosses over like autism and ADD,
Yeah, yeah.
then
So
yeah,
that would be one where I would, early on, I encountered a lot of parents working with that. They would come in working with that and it would be too much. And I would just say, well, stop, just
right,
stop. And
right,
literally within a day or two, you're going to see, okay, that's better.
right. If it's too much, if it's, yeah, for the kid.
Yeah, so it really would matter what is the supplement you're using, what's the background, what's the context. Another one would be iron supplements, which I rarely, thankfully, found parents using. I think most parents understand those can be poisonous and you can't just give your kid big iron doses without supervision. You definitely, that is one thing your pediatrician does understand about nutrition, I would say, to be a little unfair maybe, but they know that iron can be poisonous and they know how to do blood work to see if you need it and how much you might need.
Yeah,
Once in a while, I would see blood work come across with a new family and they're still eating an iron supplement that maybe they were told to use 8 months ago, didn't know
yeah,
they should ever stop, and the child's iron profile is
right,
becoming toxic. So I would say stop and
right,
call your doctor because you
right,
need more guidance on that.
right.
That's going to take a while to leave. Iron is slow to build
Word,
and
yeah.
a little longer to leave.
Right. And I think though, for the most part, like as practitioners, it's like we're trying to use the fewest supplements possible
Right.
to move the needle the furthest. And I think of it as like we're going to get this kid to a better place on many levels, whether it's like mitochondrial stress we alleviate, a little detox gets improved, the neurotransmitters are working better, the gut health is better. And then from there, it's like really that should help make the food piece a little bit easier, in terms
Right.
of getting them to try new foods, getting them to include different foods that are important for balance.
Yeah.
Because I think you can't out supplement your way from a poor diet. It's just not going to work,
No, you can't. Or that is so
So,
true. You really can't. You can't
right.
just have pills. You
Not
need
going to work.
food.
You need
You-
real stuff. Yeah. And it ideally also for like a lot of these kids that we're talking about, like the toxin load is very high for them. So it needs to be organic. It could be local, like whatever it is. You want to pick food that's not covered in chemicals and pesticides and different combinations of chemicals that have never been tested for safety, because that's part of, what goes on in our country as well. And I think local is very important. When you pick food out of the ground, it starts losing nutrition quickly. And we're a very large country, and a lot of our food, on like particularly the East Coast where I'm located, in the winter months, is coming from the West Coast or it's coming from Florida. So this food has to be trucked miles and miles, right? And every day out of the ground before it's eaten, it's losing like a lot of nutrition, particularly things like vitamin C, the more time it spends like in warehouses, on trucks, in distribution centers, finally getting to a shelf where you buy it.
Right.
So I do think as much as possible, organic, local, grow your own gardens if you can figure it out and you have the time or the interest. Get your kids interested. I mean, that's another thing. A lot of these kids are very picky eaters. Get them interested. Let them help start a garden. They might eat something or try something that would blow their
Yes.
mind if they grew it. Started it as a seed, grew it as a plant, or bring them to the supermarket with you and say, hey, you can pick anything you want, but it's got to be from, the perimeter of the market, right? The fresh
Exactly. The
section.
outside.
And you can't pick anything in the internal, but you pick one thing that you want to try that's brand new, and we will cook it tonight or make it tonight. Or maybe it's, prepared food so that like they know exactly what they have agreed to try, right? It looks exactly like it did, like behind the case. But I think bring them with you. I mean, it can take cooking a little longer. Let them get in there and stir, crack an egg, do different things. They will inherently be more interested.
Yes, that is so true. Data on that. Kids are more likely to eat something they made
Contributed.
or grew or had a hand in, yeah, somehow or other. And yeah, also the soils are so depleted now, right? So
For
if you
sure. Yeah.
have the capacity to pick up anything grown organically or biodynamically, then it
Right.
is going to be more nutritious. There will be more nutrients in that for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the bottom line with supplements is like they're tools. And if you're working with a practitioner, they can be used wisely and they can really help. I think it's just you just want to be conscious of any practitioner that comes at you, with like a huge supplement list, or is perhaps, trying to sell a bundled product with that like they're making money on, that's the motivation there. Um, and I do think, I'd say in the last 10 years, the rise of supplements for children has really, like, really taken me off guard. How many brands are geared towards kids? And
Hmm.
ask your clinical medical team, like, which brands do you recommend? I would ask probably a dietitian more than like your pediatrician. I think they
Yeah,
have more insight
pedi
on it.
yeah, pediatricians are in a tough spot. They're not trained in any of this. They're not trained in nutrition or supplements or anything like that. Unless they've personally made it a little mantra of their own.
To learn, right?
They're not gonna tell you. They're not gonna know. So yeah, you would need to go to a naturopath or a functional medicine person who's spent time getting
Studying it.
an yeah, an IFM certificate or a dietitian nutritionist who knows a little bit about this stuff too, for sure. And I think what's also really important to say about supplements is kind of like you're saying earlier, Therese, about Americans we're geared toward more is better, more is better. And of course, we're big into medications here. We're pretty
Yeah.
locked into pharmaceuticals here. And I certainly see, and probably not unusual, families I worked with would regard a supplement like they would a medication. So, oh, this is a pill for that. This pill for
Right.
that problem, pill problem, pill problem. And they're not medications and they don't necessarily work like medications.
That's a good point.
And they can in very high potencies, are very typical example would be medications for Parkinson's disease to help your dopamine levels. Um, what is that supplement they're based on? It's in an ordinary dose, it's not a medication at all, but using it for a disease like that, yes, that's FDA controlled as it should be. But don't expect that, let's say your child has pretty big ADD or ADHD, and you're going to go buy a product that says it's made for kids for ADD, and you're going to take it and they're going to get better. I mean, it might make a little dent, but there's so many drivers of attention and focus. And I mentioned this example because I think that's one category where parents are trying a lot of supplements because they don't
Yeah.
know if they're so sure about going right to a medication. I would never suggest that, oh, you can just switch a nutrition supplement for ADD instead of a medication. Because typically, again, that condition has several moving parts in your child. It could include gluten sensitivity. It could include intestinal candida burden, fungal overgrowth. It could include an iron or a zinc deficiency.
Yeah.
There's no pill for that. And that is work to sort, but that's what I used to do in my practice. There are providers who know that and do that. Not your pediatrician, unfortunately. They're trained to give your kid the medication. That's their skill set. Okay, fine, if you need it, whatever. But thinking, oh, can I just go buy this product I'm seeing on Amazon and give that pill instead? Probably not.
Yeah.
If it works for your kid, great. And maybe it just all your kid needed was a little light touch of a few herbal or nutritional things. But if you're talking about all these other components that really impede attention and focus, they need correcting. Your kid's going to be much happier, much healthier anyway. So,
Right. And all the pathways are connected. If you have mitochondrial stress and you have problems with detox and you have gut dysbiosis, you're going to have to deal with all of them in order to move the needle, on
right,
a condition, which is not going to be typically one thing. It's going to be a
right.
few things, changing the diet. It's going to be a rolled up, protocol.
Mhm.
So I think that's great advice because I think the bottom line is supplements are tools, as we said, and I think they can't replace the fundamentals. Real food,
Nope.
real
Food.
movement. Kids need movement every day. They need deep
Yes.
sleep, they need certain basic things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so critical. And also, we've talked before about microbiome.
Yep.
One thing to also remember, I'll mention about using supplements in kids. If that microbiome is really disrupted, those microbes pretty much eat first. So if you
There.
pour a bunch of high potency B vitamins on a microbiome that's really disrupted or has a lot of fungal overgrowth, it's probably gonna have your kid hit the ceiling because those microbes also can use those supplements and
Nutrients, right.
will kind of have a bloom in the wrong direction. So same product might work a lot better after you correct some dysbiosis. So there's all these layers to this. And
Yeah.
it can be overwhelming. Yes, work with a provider who knows how to do this with kids. Yes, they can be helpful. Yes, they can be sketchy, crummy, counterfeit, but don't buy them off the internet so much. I also want to say I've used these in infants as well. I've used little tinctures. There are some very nice herbal products that are tinctures, very gentle, made for babies, young toddlers. They usually are formulated in glycerite, not alcohol, and very, very useful. I won't mention brands at all, but those are out there. And you can always call that manufacturer. If you see a product that you're interested in, that's an option to just call the manufacturer directly and ask for, not that they're going to give you medical advice, obviously they can't, but guidance on that product. Or even if you're seeing a product you're interested in and it's on Amazon and you're not sure if it's legit there, you can call the manufacturer and say, do you guys sell your product on Amazon? They may say, no, we do not want you to buy from that person.
Yeah.
So there's other ways like that to maybe get a little more info and support.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all fair, but I just think the whole thing is buyer beware is kind
For
of the bottom
sure.
line.
Yeah,
Um, all
for
right.
sure.
Well, this was a good topic. Thank
Yeah,
you
this is
so
an
much as
interesting
always.
one. It's big, it's wide. Parents have lots of questions. We'll get our presents up somehow on the web. These are going up on YouTube anyway
Yes.
for the time being at Judy Converse Nutrition. as we kind of develop how we're doing this, Therese.
Yep,
But yeah, we want to be able to get feedback or questions so people can at least comment there for now, but we'll probably get more of that organized as we go along.
for sure. We're
Yeah,
getting there slowly.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, thank you. And we will see you again soon.
See you next time.
Bye.